Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. I'm Anthony Skinner, producer of the show, and we are thrilled that you have joined us on the show today. We have some great guests. They just happen to be close personal friends of mine, Drew and Ellie Holcomb. I'm sure that most of you are very familiar with Drew and Ellie and their music. For those of you that are not, you're in for a treat. Drew and Ellie are a husband and wife Americana duo from right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Of course, they began touring together as Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors. The band has supported many national touring acts, including Ryan Adams, Don Henley, Willie Nelson. Ellie is no longer with the Neighbors. She now has her own very successful solo career. She's topped the charts with her albums As Sure as the Sun and Red Sea Road. Drew Holcomb still tours nationally with Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors, and their most recent album, Souvenir, is their most critically acclaimed release yet. So with them going many different directions, it's a big treat for us to get them in the room together for a conversation, and not only a conversation, but of course, as we do here in Typology, a little music to boot. But enough with the introductions. Let's get on with it. And now, here is the host of our show, Ian Cron.
Ellie and Drew, welcome to Typology.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah. Ellie, you have drawn the attention of my dog, Percy.
I love Percy.
He is at your feet.
He is the first dog that's made me want a dog.
Really?
Yeah, that's a big deal. I had a big moment this morning when I walked in. I'm like, I think I'm okay with the dog. Percy turned the tide.
I've been pushing for a dog to no avail, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
It's a major day for us.
He has that effect on people, I will say.
He's special.
Yeah, he is. He is my all-day companion. Yeah. Sleeps on the bed. The dog runs my life. Pretty much. That dog runs my life.
He's in the sun. He's found the one spot of sun that resonates with me, you know. Yeah. So
he's probably a 7.
All dogs are 7s, true. I got an email. So I get these emails, or I get like people reach out and they ask me questions about the Enneagram, right?
Yes.
And someone said, well, my son, I think, he's 5 years old and he's really charming. I think he's a 7. And I went back. I said, all 5-year-olds are 7s. She was very disappointed.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. All 5-year-olds and all dogs.
Yeah. There you go. What do you expect?
That's good company if you can keep it.
It is. It is. Well, now, I know you two guys are Enneagram aficionados. How did you learn about the Enneagram?
That's a great question.
My first round with the Enneagram, and really our first round, was counseling.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I was in really intensive counseling 3 years into our marriage. So how long ago was that? About 10 years ago?
Yeah, 10 years ago.
About a decade ago. And read Richard Rohr.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when we read sort of the way our two personalities interact, we were like, has someone been watching us?
Yes.
Like it was.
Yeah. And we laughed so hard. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so known by this book.
By someone I don't know. Yeah.
This guy, Richard, knows me.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, the scales fall from the eyes moment, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like literally.
Truthfully, it was a gift. It was a gift for us because we were navigating a lot at that time in our marriage. And so
we're opposites, we're classic opposites attract, and so we were very much always trying to understand each other's way of living and operating, and it helped just kind of give us some language for that. And so we were like early, the early cult members of the Enneagram. Hey, have you guys heard about this thing? It's really great.
Ancient personality test. It was great, but it has been a transformative tool in our marriage. And then in my family, we brought it, I guess, a year and a half after we kind of first encountered it. We brought it on a family vacation and all went through.
Ellie convinced all of her siblings. She's the oldest of 5. Convinced all of her siblings her brother's wife and her parents to take the online thing beforehand, and it was like 3 nights in a row of just like all this great
Going after
conversation.
it. I know they're
Great.
supposed to read through everything, but at the time I was like, just take this test and let's
just
start a
jump in,
conversation.
you know?
And it was particularly for one of the brothers. I'm oldest of 5, the middle brother, who's a different number than any of the other numbers. There's a lot of the same numbers in my family. It was transformative for him and for us. We were like, oh, you don't hate us. You just need more space than all of us need.
Oh,
And-
he's a 5.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
With the 4-wing. And so it was so, and poor thing, he's surrounded by 7s and 9s. And
Don't
so,
say his name because he would hate to be being
yeah,
talked
he wouldn't
about
want to
on
be,
the
he
podcast.
who shall not be named. But it was such a gift for all of us to just have some common ground. It felt like common ground for the first time
Yeah.
ever.
You know, it's so funny you should say that because I've had a couple of experiences in the last few weeks of parents who have children who are 5s. And it was revelatory for them. It was revelatory.
For the parents.
Very,
Yeah.
very healing, and also brought so much insight. And 5 with 4 is a quirky combo.
It is.
That's like, an incredible artists, often.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Amazing artists, because their powers of observation mingled with that 4 creativity gives you David Byrne.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it gives you some really cool stuff,
Yeah.
really, really great stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, they just don't miss anything. But and what's interesting about 5s, well, I mean, Ellie, you're a 7, Drew, you're an 8, so we're not going to spend too much on 5 land,
Yeah.
right? Though you have a lot as a 7 to learn from 5s.
I'm like, actually, I probably should spend some time learning about this. Isn't that where I
Yeah.
move, like in wholeness and
Yeah.
health? Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I have a lot to learn.
I love what you just said. That's where I move in wholeness.
Yeah.
That is a wonderful way of talking about security.
Oh, yeah. I guess that is the actual word, security. But yeah, I think of it as
No, that's a
like
better word.
wholeness. Yeah.
That is a lovely word.
I'm not
And
sure I move there all that much, but I want to.
Well,
Dreams and aspirations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have high hopes that I will.
yeah. And it'll be fun when I get there.
It'll be great.
Wildly stimulating and entertaining. It'll be fantastic. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about a 7 with an 8 in relationship, because you are the first 7-8 combo I think we've ever had on Typology.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, really?
Nice.
I don't meet a lot of 7-8 combos.
Yeah.
I meet a
Okay.
lot of 8-2 combos. I actually meet a lot of 7-5 combos.
Nice.
Interestingly,
That makes
I've met a bunch of those. But 7 and 8. So let's start off this way. All right. Think back to when you first discovered the Enneagram, and tell me, maybe Ellie, I'll start with you.
Okay.
How you would describe Drew through the lens of the Enneagram to somebody else.
Okay.
And then maybe comment about how, after learning, really getting into it, how your perception of him changed, kind of like before and after knowing the Enneagram.
Sure. Oh, man. Well, the way that I would have described him, you mean like once I had the Enneagram? Okay, yeah. I think I would have used the word with Enneagram at that time, like justice is extremely important to him, and the challenger was a really helpful word for me. A challenger of justice. So
Right.
it was my opinion of him. I hate pain. I hate conflict. I really just honestly didn't do it before I was married to him. And then I married a challenger.
Right.
And so I had spent the first 3 years of our marriage really unbeknownst to Drew, but just hiding and trying to back away from any challenge that might be presented. And so I think my perception of him changed after the Enneagram to know that this isn't just like him trying to cause pain on me. It's just the way that he operates in the world. And what happened as I started rising to meet his challenges and actually like started using my voice, he liked me so much better. And I was like, what? I'm being a bitch. I'm like, I hate myself. I hate this. I hate having conflict. And he's like,
I'm like, I
no,
knew it was
this is the
inside
good
you.
stuff. This is the good stuff. I knew it was in there. And so it was such a joy for me because it was this introduction really for the first time into like real relationship. And so I guess my perception would have been, truthfully, like a bully before, because I just didn't understand where he was coming from, and a really sweet bully. Like I loved him and I knew that he loved me, but when he got onto something that was like, this isn't right, let's go here, I'm like, no, I'm fine, whatever you say is fine. And he was always like, play with me, you know. And I'm like, I don't want any part of that game. So it switched from bully to actually deeply engaged friend. And so I am really grateful. That was a huge shift in our marriage.
And I think too, the language of how I sort of process pain and justice. Like I have to, there was something about one of the things we read about an 8, that 8s like to verbally sort of, release their frustration into the world. So when I get mad, I need to like go outside and just like literally like roar like a lion. I remember one time we were watching Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood with our with our 2-year-old, and there's this scene where it's like they sing this song to Daniel because he's mad, and it's like, when you feel so sad that you want to roar, or when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. And I was like, absolutely not. When you feel so, this is an 8. It's like, when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath, then roar. Because then after the roar, you're like, okay, I'm good. I just needed to roar. I just needed to, like, being pent up, being caged as an 8 is death.
Right.
It's like you feel like, so I just need, to go express that. And so I've learned the healthy way for me to do that, though, is not necessarily in the moment, but it's like, hey, I need 10 minutes. I'll be back.
And I need to not put a silencer on your roar.
Yeah.
Which is what
Like, I'm going to go on a walk, and I'm going to, like, feel the things that I'm feeling right now. But then also my tendency as an 8 is to want to fight it out immediately. And I've learned with Ellie after reading about 7s that like, oh, this is like exposing brokenness in the relationship or exposing brokenness in the world is really scary, huge, scary for her. And so I can't just like drop bombs all the time. I have to like give her space to like process hard truths and then come back and talk about them. And so it gave us like some practical ways of like how to like navigate those things. And, it's interesting too, talking about pain, like 8s, or at least pain is like very comfortable with pain. It's a mountain to climb. It's not necessarily like I don't want to necessarily sit in it, but I'm not afraid of it. Like I can kind of like, my counselor always says like 8s carry big burdens and they carry them pretty well. Yeah. Like you can put 150 pounds on my back and you're not going to know I'm carrying it unless I trust you and I tell you about it. And that circle is pretty small. Yeah.
The danger I think with 8s in that regard is that they don't have a sense of their own limitations.
No.
So what happens is they can carry that 150 pounds without realizing it's exacting a physical or emotional or spiritual toll.
For sure.
Totally.
So yeah, it's like we have a lot of capacity, but we can definitely overdo it and actually over solo it. Like you kind of tend to be, I got this. I'm going to bend the world to my will.
Right.
We're both in counseling in and out all the time, both of us, and then separately as well. But I in the past probably 2 years, Drew's been sort of on a counseling journey, and I feel like I'm married to a different person. Because what's happened in the past 2 years, just like you're saying that they carry this weight. Drew's like really connected with his heart and let me in a way that has been so beautiful, to like what he's feeling. I think he's connected with it himself and then been like kind enough to let me in as well. And so there's been more sensitivity from him than I've ever encountered before. And so I actually had to like relearn how to be married to him for just a second there. I was like, oh, you didn't actually used to care about, I don't know. It just you would let a lot roll off your back, and you're more tender than you've been. So, I mean, I'm not like mean, but I just was not quite, I wasn't very sensitive towards you for a long time because I wasn't used to needing to be.
She sort of thought that I was like always fine. And so I started being like, well, actually, no, I'm not. I just, I'm just carrying it internally, and I'm going to stop doing that all the time.
Right.
And so now you have to, like, I'm actually, I never wanted to be kind of needed, and so now I'm like learning, like, oh, I actually do have needs, and I'm going to express them, inside the intimacy of our marriage, Sure. Whereas I used to just be like, I got it, I'm good,
right,
I'm fine,
There's a great quote Friedrich Nietzsche has that I love. He says, "It's not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages."
Yeah. That's been the sweetest thing about us from the beginning is we actually knew each other for 4 years before we got married, or before we started dating.
Yeah.
And then part of what happened with Ellie is because she's this, basically like the living female version of Elf. I mean, she is. Everything's amazing, and
she lives in a state of perpetual surprise.
Yes, color,
right? Everything's a surprise.
Bright colors and happiness and joy, and so because of that, and college, like, and because of obviously she's just like an incredible personality and beautiful woman. Lots of guys were interested in dating her, and she dated a handful of guys, and they were all sort of in love with the idea of Ellie. Mm-hmm. And I knew her as a friend, and knew that there was like there is in every single person, there's like pain and sadness under the surface, and I had known her enough to be sort of let into some of that. And so when those relationships fell apart, I was always kind of standing over in the corner, like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, we've got friendship. We've got, I'm attracted to you. I know you're not attracted to me yet, but
but you will.
But you will be, because I'm an 8, and I'm gonna do this.
I'm gonna make this happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting. So before we started recording, and now twice since we've been recording, the two of you have mentioned on a couple of occasions counseling.
Yeah.
So clearly, it features importantly in your lives. And if it's okay, I just want to dive into that for a little bit, because 7s often will duck counseling.
Oh yeah.
And I've actually, although I don't have a practice anymore, 7s were always a challenge, because you'd get them in and you'd start to move them towards uncomfortable feelings. And if it wasn't charm, if it wasn't, which is a great way out, the ability to change the subject, to tell a joke, or did I tell you what happened to my son this morning? It's so hysterical. It's like, no, come back, heal, stay with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard for 7s to stay, right? And so 7s often don't, like, they'll come for a few times, and then if they get too close to the source, they start missing appointments.
Yeah.
Air quotes, missing appointments.
Yeah.
And 8s sometimes don't come in for very obvious reasons, right? It's hard for them. Typically, 8s struggle with self-reflection, right? I'm a 4. I can self-reflect until you want to be nauseous. You know what I'm saying? But 8s are their focus is very external, right? Their attention, their focus of attention is very much outside themselves, not inside themselves, right? So I want to know what it is that drove a 7 and an 8, in as much as you're comfortable, to go to counseling. Like, what's the urgency in it?
Well, I'll start, and then I want to hand it to you because it really was Ellie's Ellie made a big step that she should tell you about. But when we got married, we thankfully, both of our parents, my parents and her parents, were big proponents of marriage counseling. Not just pre-marriage counseling, but just, hey, go to pre-marriage counseling, then get married and keep going.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that obviously there was a precedent of
Destigmatized.
It wasn't a stigmatized thing in our households growing up. And not to say that our parents went all the time. It was more like, just like, hey, this should be somewhat regular in your life. And when you have an issue, you need help. You're young. We were 24 and 23. And so, but then we sort of started hitting some sort of major roadblocks. And that's when Ellie sort of made this pretty important step. You should tell them the story about what needed the 3 options.
Yeah. Well, so it's so funny that you say it, because I literally went to counseling for the first time, Porter's Call, which has been such a gift to our marriage, Al and Nita.
Yep.
Nita was still there at the time, and I literally sat down and I was like, so Nita, I have this friend. And I literally, there was a relationship that there was a lot of conflict in, and it was one of those things that it was so painful to me. I didn't know how to get up afterwards. I felt like I'd broken a leg and I couldn't walk right. But what it
and
did,
part of it was my interaction with this third party.
Yeah.
That was really, because I'm an 8, I had sort of had these, painful conflicts with this person, and instead of trying to back out of it, I fully moved straight into it, and it kind of was a minefield for Ellie.
It was broken.
But I was like, hey, this is real. We can't run away from this. We have to deal with this.
Right.
But it was it created a set of insurmountable obstacles relationally.
It felt like a relational bomb went off with a very dear friend, and then it was connected with Drew and in our and it exposed some things in our marriage that I was running from. And so I was like, so I have this friend, and I finished talking, and I was like, I just mainly really need to know how to deal with them. And if you can just give me some tools, that would be great. That's why I'm here. And so she just sat back after I talked for maybe 45 minutes and a long time.
Yep.
Yeah. I just was like, this is the story. This is what's going on. Just need some strategies to cope with this person. And she was just like, I want you to think about salsa. And I was like, I love salsa. Yes. What about it? Let's talk. And she was like, you are actually in need of some intensive counseling. And you can choose your salsa, mild, medium, hot. Mild's going to look like coming in here once a year. We can talk about your friend or whatever else you feel like you need help with. Medium's a need-to-know basis. So this, as things come up, we can come and work through those together. She was like, hot's going to look like laying your personality out across the gospel. Or not the gospel, but just the truth. So the truth. And just saying, we're going to experience some truth and expose some lies that you've been believing and some pretty serious broken patterns that are in your life. You're going to hate coming in here, and you're going to not want to come back every time. So you can choose mild or medium. But if you do that in 10 to 12 years, your life is going to fall apart, or you can choose hot. And so I was like, hot, and cried the whole way back home, because I think I knew deep down something was off and broken in me, but I had spent my whole life running from it. And Brené Brown says, it's really scary to own the brokenness in our story, but it's a hell of a lot scarier and harder to spend our lives running from it. And so it was the beginning of a journey for me to freedom and embracing the brokenness in my life and in the world. Still on the journey.
Yeah. So just a second ago, when you said the phrase you used was spent my whole life running from it.
Yeah.
And when you said it, there was a catch. I could pick it up in your voice.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm still here in counseling doing this.
Yeah. So, again, in as much as you're comfortable, if you had to put language to it, what was it you were spending your whole life running from?
Yeah, so I did a lot of work in that season of counseling, and kind of like graduated for a second from counseling. I was like, oh man, I am so much healthier, because I started telling the truth to myself, to God, to
Me.
Drew, and then that has trickled down into most every relationship if you're close enough with me, and so that changed a lot. But I think we've been in counseling again with Drew's counselor, and so recently I've just been delving into, and this is really, I like you, Ian, because I don't go here a lot, but I have some wounds from my childhood. I have amazing parents who are humans, and so I just have focused on the amazing parents part and neglected to ever go into any of those wounds, which I think probably at the time when I was younger, my counselor was trying to get me to do. And I'm like, no, that's not the problem. Because it felt too painful to go through. So I just was laughing when you were saying 7s are hard in counseling, because in this counseling session, I was saying some really hard things about my childhood and laughing. And the counselor was like, why are you laughing right now? Like, and I'm like, because if I don't laugh, I'm gonna sob. And I just started sobbing, and it just launched me. I've been on a journey this last year of just really grieving some things that were lost in my childhood that I can't get back, and so I am so grateful for that process, even though I still hate feeling sad and feeling pain. But it's actually caused more wholeness and so when I say wholeness, like I, as a person, to walk into that and to see, even walking into some of my deepest wounds, to know and learn, like, it's okay. You're going to be okay after that. Even after you acknowledge some of the hardest, painful things, like, I'm still here.
Yeah.
That's a gift for me to know.
Well, the wound, a lot of times that or the lie, I should say, right? That 7s pick up is that it's really not okay to depend on anybody else for anything, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to come up with a strategy to navigate the world with that underlying assumption, underneath the waterline of consciousness that's operating. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so, just the truth being for the 7, that the counter message they have to hear is, it's all right. You're going to be taken care of, right?
Totally. It is a healing and powerful message to hear.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, and then what happens is, for all of us, I think, in our type, is we sort of face the lie and we face the truth of, of what the world is that arthritic grip, that paralytic grip that our type has on us begins to soften. And our commitment to the strategies of our type, our manic compulsive commitment to those strategies, just begins to soften. They don't go away. I'm just saying, but they soften, and we discover I don't always have to be funny. I don't always have to be finding entertainment. I don't always have to see the silver lining. I don't always have to do this or that. I can actually deal with pain. I know that I can be supported, that I will be taken care of. And then suddenly you're not caught in the autopilot of the crazy manic 7.
Which is a gift.
Oh, because it's exhausting. And all of our strategies are really exhausting at the end of the day. All right, Drew, I'm going to come back to you in just a second, but this is actually a great segue into talking about one of our typology's amazing friends and sponsors, which is Restoring the Soul. You were just talking about Alanita and Porter's Call.
Oh,
and one of the things that I've learned as a therapist and as a, someone I go to therapy I basically never not go, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's a big piece of my life. It's part of my recovery journey. It's part of a lot of different things for me. But one of the lessons I've learned is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute hour. In fact, I would call that the mild sauce. You know what I mean? Mild to medium. Sometimes you need the hot sauce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that a typical weekly session can't give you. And that's why some people can go to couples therapy or individual counseling for months or even years and never really get anywhere using the mild sauce. It just doesn't work. So I'm a fan. I'm a believer in this intensive counseling process at a place called Restoring the Soul in Colorado. Restoring the Soul was created by my longtime friend Michael Cusick to help couples and individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Michael and his team know that sometimes you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough. You need the hot salsa. So, for nearly 20 years, they've helped couples and individuals transform their relationships and their lives. So, Typology listeners, if you are looking to get out of the rut you're in but can't wait for years or months, call my friend Michael at Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation. That number is 303-932-9777, and learn how their intensive counseling process can jumpstart your journey or launch you to a whole new place. And Anthony,
yes,
as a special bonus for just our Typology listeners,
that's right,
make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma may be derailing your relationship.
There you go.
There it is, right there, man. Drew.
Hey, wait, before we move on,
Yes?
let's tell people about Luminous.
Oh my gosh.
What is Luminous?
Ooh.
That sounds good.
This is a new Jiminy Jam. So, over the years, I've had a bunch of people talk to me about, wanting to do a deeper dive into the Enneagram beyond just, the basics. And so I'm thrilled to be the person to tell you about Luminous, which is a 2-day Enneagram intensive that I'm going to be hosting with my good friend Beatrice Chestnut.
Sweet.
Those of you who haven't read Beatrice's book, The Complete Enneagram, that's like my second go-to book. When I tell people, you read The Road Back to You, you get a good primer, but man, if you want to take the next step, go to Beatrice's book. Luminous is a content-rich experience that's going to teach participants how to take their Enneagram knowledge and use it to create a more luminous self, a joy, more radiant related. I'm coming in on all my light issues here, my light metaphors. Space is limited to just 115 participants who get to experience teaching and panels on topics such as centers of intelligence and developmental deficits and instincts and subtypes. We're going to hit all kinds of deeper level stuff. This is going to be a blast. It's going to be real interactive. We're going to be trying to take people from here to there through the Enneagram and connect with like-minded individuals who can encourage them on the path. We're going to have great music. We're going to have great food. It's not going to be just like, let's just deep dive in the Enneagram. We're going to have a lot of fun. If you are interested in coming to Luminous June 28th and 29th, it's right here in Music City, Nashville.
Woo-hoo.
It's going to be great, man. It's going to be better than the NFL draft going on right now, screwing up my traffic life. If you're interested, June 28 and 29, right here in Nashville, visit Ian Morgan Cron /Luminous, LUMINOUS for more details and to register. And so early bird pricing ends tomorrow. All right, Drew. Now, Ellie put herself out there. Now, I'm going to ask you to do the same. You're an 8. You're in therapy. So for me, with 8s in therapy, there can be similar challenges to a 7, but it's a different kind of intensity, right?
Yeah.
Usually for an 8 to get in the room, someone's had to wallop them a little bit,
sure.
For them to be able to say, I'm going to reach out beyond myself. I'm going to be willing to self-reflect because vulnerability is not your first language. Right?
Yeah.
What brought you there? What are you working on as an 8? What's happening?
Well, I mean, there's sort of the long answer is that I sort of started a journey of self-reflection when I was about 21. I had a brother that died when I was 17, and I responded to that with a kind of classic, let me give you 10 reasons why his life was awesome and worth living, and give me, give you the high points of his obituary and make sense of it through that sort of means, but not actually like allow myself to miss him. So my senior year of college, I was in this program at University of Tennessee where you can kind of build your own major, and so I did a project where I did 100 interviews of people who knew him and trying to dive into why his life was important to them, doctors, friends, because he had 2,000 people that came to his funeral. He was a very like magnanimous young kid in town, and so in doing that, I was like really dove into my own like sadness and grief, and so I became very acquainted with grief and became acquainted with allowing myself to sort of feel deeply and sadly, and then also rise out of that. And I'm also have a 7 wing, so I love fun, I love people, I love doing things, and so it's kind of how Ellie and I even got together, was we both just loved this, sort of had this big sense of adventure. She would casually say something in college like, man, that'd be fun to go do that. And the next thing you know, I'd already planned it, you know? So it's like,
That's great.
that's sort of one of the like benefits of being an 8 is like just a can-do spirit, you know? So there were a variety of reasons I went to counseling over the years that were sort of like the mild, you know, like I want to fix this or deal with this. But really, I got really sick about 3 years ago. I got meningitis and spent 9 days in the hospital.
Oh.
And coming out of that, I was really, I couldn't really get better. I couldn't feel better. And I really had, you know, I don't know if, you know, it wasn't PTSD, but it was very much like I just couldn't function the way I was used to functioning. And so I went to a counselor, and like I couldn't express to anyone I was close to how scary it was to feel like you're gonna die. And I really, in the hospital, thought I was gonna die multiple days.
And you could have.
I could have.
Yeah.
And I was afraid to. You know, my buddies were like, "Oh man, that was crazy how sick you were." You know, it's like, yeah, it was really crazy. You know, and then I didn't feel like I could necessarily express it to Ellie because I didn't want her to. Try to make it better, which is sort of a tendency of like a sort of a big personality, you know, or at least that was my fear.
Right.
You know, obviously it's not exactly true. So I started going to counseling and was able to sort of dive down into that, and then out of that went through a sort of a professional desert right after that sort of burned all the furniture in my room, you know, internally.
Right.
And gave me just like a significant identity crisis. And so I had heard of this guy who's also an 8, who's a counselor, and I was like, that's what I need. I need a good butt kicking. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need another counselor just to go, wow, that's good. You know, I need somebody to like get in my face. And that's what has happened, and it's been really good. And so I think for me, part of it was having kids. I just wanted to be a dad that, like led them well, but also gave them plenty of space. You know, our firstborn is a daughter, and so she opened up these new rooms in my heart that were not there before. I mean, when she was a newborn, I was playing with her on the floor, and I like made the baby voice and called her Pumpkin, and Ellie literally goes, "What? Did you just say Pumpkin?" And I was like, "I'll say whatever I want to my daughter." You know, because like that would not have been a word I would have used. Like I'm a very man's man, like. Pumpkin, what, you know? But it's like this funny thing we look back on. And so, man, our middle son is he's just this sweet, sensitive kid. He's all boy, but he's just different than me. And I want to be like, I don't want to. 8s tend to, I think, sort of see the world a certain way and want everyone to sort of, you know, that's why they make great dictators, you know, or they make dictators. I don't know if there's a such thing as a great dictator, but you know, I try to be more of like a benevolent monarch, sort of, you know, that's
Good of you. That's very good of you.
You know, well, it's funny, like I've had this band now for 14 years, and 2 of the guys that have been in the band now for 14 plus years with me, and we joke that's kind of how the band operates. It's like somebody has to make the decisions. I'm okay with making decisions, but I want to be wise that there are plenty of things I'm not the expert on, and they are. And so I need to listen and default to them as often as possible. And obviously marriage is different than that. I'm not a monarch in the marriage. You know, we're equal. And I really have loved the sort of the journey that we've had of Ellie really coming into her own, and even her deciding to choose to do her career, which was a huge step of scariness for her and fear. And she's done really well and really climbed a lot of mountains. And to be a cheerleader, I think that one of the hardest things for 8s to do is to let others be in charge. Because you always think you're the best person in the room to be in charge, which I don't know what that is. It's a really sick and demented point of view in some ways, but it also tends to somewhat usually be true because you have this capacity to go in and like make things happen. Yeah. You can go in like not scared ever of chaos. It's like, I will show you how we'll get through this chaos. But sometimes now it's like, hey, this is not my chaos. I'm in it. But it's not mine. It's not mine to fix. I'm just going to help the other person navigate their way through it. But I'm not, I don't have to be in charge here.
Wow. Drew Holcomb, thank you for sharing that revelation that really runs counter to the core message of the Enneagram 8. I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of our 2-part series with Drew and Ellie Holcomb. We're going to leave you with a song by Ellie titled Do Not Worry. And what a great song to counter the core message of the Enneagram 8, which is I've got to be in control, which of course comes from fear. So this is the perfect song to go out on. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, part 1 of part 2 with Drew and Ellie Holcomb. Stick around for next week's episode, part 2. I know you're going to enjoy that as well. Until then, that's all for me, Anthony Skinner. Thank you for joining our host, Ian Cron, and myself here on Typology Podcast. Enjoy Ellie Holcomb and her song, Do Not Worry.
See the birds that are singing in the spring air. They're given everything they need. They don't worry where their next meal will come from. They don't worry about a thing. So just look around you and try to listen to the song creation sings. And don't you worry, 'cause you're in the hands of the God who made everything. See the flowers in their colorful beauty. They're dressed better than a king. They don't worry about what they should wear, no. They don't worry about a thing. So just look around you and try to listen to the song creation sings. And don't you worry, 'cause you're in the hands of the God who made everything. Because you're not a bird and you're not a flower. You don't have petals or wings. But there is good news, you're worth so much more to the God who made everything. Ooh, 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 So when you worry about today or tomorrow and the storms that they might bring, try to remember that you're in the hands of the God who made every single thing. Now just remember, you're not a bird and you're not a flower. You don't have petals or wings. But there's good news, 'cause you're worth so much more to the God who made everything.
Yeah.